Talk about insulin resistance. I want to talk about a few things that I've gone over with people over the last few days and hopefully give some new perspective, maybe we'll call it, so that you can understand a few things happening with the protocol with insulin resistance, your weight loss, you getting better, all of that. But I also want to talk about MS and insulin resistance because I had that question on Friday. I want to apologize for not being here yesterday. Things happen. And so we're here today, and I'm going to talk about all of this stuff. So let's dive in and talk about insulin resistance and some of the things up above that are causing people to struggle. So I'm trying to get my research on the MS done. You guys, thanks for being patient with me and understanding that I'm just a average everyday person like you guys. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist. I'm just somebody who suffered with all of these things and got better by finally addressing the root cause. And did that when doctors and nutritionists weren't helping me. I'm not saying that all doctors and nutritionists are bad, but I'm just saying I've had a lifetime of working with them and not one was able to help. And I was frustrated and I felt hopeless. And every day it feels like I talk to more and more people who feel just like I did. So let's dive in. Multiple sclerosis. There is a high link between multiple sclerosis and insulin resistance. So I am going to look at my research right now. Thank you guys for understanding. It says, so they found a significantly higher prevalence of insulin resistance. 33 to 46% of MS patients have some form of insulin resistance. And when we look at studies and say, is this linked or not? When we have a number that's that high, 33 to 46%, that's a pretty high value of people that actually have insulin resistance. Yeah, so and part of it does have this, it looks like part of it has to do with on some, oh, I need my tea this morning. On some videos, I've talked about vascularity and how sugars and this whole thing of insulin resistance affects your blood lipid levels. And it's changing how the balance of you have the LDL, the low density lipoprotein, you have HDL, high density lipoprotein, and you have triglycerides. So when we look at those three numbers that make up your cholesterol panel, when we're talking about the low density lipoprotein, what's happening is there's a balance or a ratio between the type A, the big and buoyant type of LDL, and the smaller, denser type of LDL. Well, with insulin resistance, it seems that that smaller, denser form of LDL is more prevalent, and our triglycerides start to go up. Well, those two things are highly correlated to what's going on with multiple sclerosis. So the fact that insulin resistance is changing how your lipid profile looks and the balance within that lipid profile. So you guys, I just tore open my tea. I'm stirring it up because I need this cup of warmth today. So that's one of the ways that it's linking to multiple sclerosis. So here's my thing before I finish. What I want everyone to understand, and I think this is super important. I am not saying that insulin resistance is going to cure the world. Is it going to take care of a majority of things that we're struggling with that nobody seems to have answers for? Yes, it should. All of the things on the list are things that people struggle with that are related to insulin resistance that people have gotten better from. Okay, I just want to make sure there's no other questions besides some comments that have been blocked. All right, so insulin resistance was also found to be associated with a degree of disability and time frame. MS diagnosis happened. One study was showing, and another study found that insulin resistance was associated with cognitive dysfunction in MS patients. And all of that really makes sense to me as I've been talking over this last year, especially how, okay, so we understand that it's changing our vascularity. We understand that it's changing our blood lipid panel, and that's linked. But now what they're saying is this cognitive dysfunction that seems to be happening in MS patients is highly linked to insulin resistance. Now, remember that 3 of the tissues in your body that are going to become insulin resistant the quickest are your livers, your heart, your liver, your kidneys, your heart, and your brain. So as your brain becomes resistant to insulin, we start to see a decline in cognitive function. We start to see an increase in depression and anxiety because the brain needs glucose to function. And with insulin resistance, even though glucose is present, the cells are not able to take up the insulin in certain areas, and the brain is one. And so now we have all kinds of phantom pains, neurological cues aren't happening, and the energy we need in the brain just isn't there. Now, what I really wanted to talk about, what we're getting to, is weight loss and insulin resistance. Couple of interesting things. It tends to happen that leptin stays high when insulin is high, which means you're always hungry. But also, this fact that the brain is not getting energy means that the brain is going to be screaming for energy. And energy is what? Glucose. And glucose comes from what? Our food. So now you're hungry all the time with insulin resistance, and it's causing you to want to snack and eat all the time to get your energy levels up. That constant craving is not always just emotional, an emotional trigger for, remembering good times or avoiding bad times or whatever. Your brain is actually saying, I'm hungry, I need energy, I'm failing, I'm having headaches, I can't think straight, things just aren't functioning well up here. And it's because insulin is taken over and doesn't allow us to utilize the sugar properly. So let's dive into a little bit about insulin resistance, and then I want to explain why I'm going to be talking about the scale and how it's not a perfect measure of your weight loss efforts. Because really, what you're looking for is a leaner, healthier body and less fat on your body, not necessarily less weight. And I'll explain why. So, have a seat and let's talk. And you guys, I love when you ask questions, when you have input, when, even if it's something that, as long as it's respectful, doesn't fall in line with what I'm saying, then it gives us conversation. It gives us a time to get this out and understand what may be happening, and everyone benefits from it. So please feel free to comment. I would love that. So, insulin resistance really is it's the simplest thing, but it's affecting 93% of us. So if 93% of us have a metabolic disorder, a 2022 paper showed that 93% of us have a metabolic type disorder. In 2018, a similar study was done and said that only 88% of us were insulin resistant or having a metabolic disorder. So in 4 years' time, we went from 88% to 93%. And that was 2 years ago, the last study was done. Who knows what that number looks like now? So when I talk about insulin resistance being the root cause of most of our diseases and disorders today, this is why. 93% of us have this metabolic disorder, and yet most of us are going in and not getting answers as to why your blood pressure is high, why your eyesight's failing, why your teeth and gums won't quit bleeding no matter how many times you've gone to the doctor, why you have phantom joint pain, why you putting on weight that doesn't seem to go away, why is your blood pressure going up, why are you suffering with PCOS or erectile dysfunction or gout or a number of other things. It all links into insulin resistance. So here's the mechanism, okay? When we have insulin resistance, it really does come from eating too often and eating the wrong foods too often. Now, yeah, we could all do better. Most of us just want to do better. Some of us just don't have the time or resources to be able to make that kind of step in our lives at this point. So I like to talk to people who are willing to make a change, who are ready to do something different. Because you guys, if you don't make a change, you're just going to keep going where you are going, right? So insulin resistance is too much food too often. And what's the food that we're getting in too much of? Because it's not necessarily about excess calories. Yeah, that plays a small part, but not the part that you guys have been told. So Sugars are really what's causing the lion's share of our problems. And those sugars aren't just the white granular stuff that we think about. It's not just the breads and the pastas and the cakes and the cookies and the donuts and all of that stuff. Yeah, it happens in rice, it happens in potatoes, but it can even be high in some of our fruits and vegetables. Well, but we've been eating fruits and vegetables for centuries and we haven't had this problem. Right, we haven't. And our genetics don't change this quickly that 50 years ago we weren't having this abundance of problems, but all of a sudden today we do. That's not a genetic change. That's not people being more genetically predisposed to being overweight. That's not people being more genetically disposed to having insulin resistance. That's a change in our environment. Our environment is going to change quicker than we are. Good morning, Margie. And so it's good to see you again, Margie. Um, so what we really need to understand is, why is this happening to our food? What's going on? And so there's a number of things. I'm going to say a plethora of things that have caused this imperfect food that we're having today. So when Ansel Keys came out over 60 years ago and said that fat was bad for us, that was a boon for some of the food industry, because fat keeps us full. Fat keeps us not wanting to eat, and fat gives us a source of fuel. But it also flavors our food and it keeps us feeling full. And when people started becoming afraid of fat and started going to this low fat diet, we started having problems with sugar. That's when excess sugar started being added to almost all of our foods. And it was because it flavored the food. It gave the food that yummy flavor that we could no longer have because everybody was so afraid of fats. So we went from flavoring with fats to flavoring with sugar. The thing is, again, fats keep you fuller longer. Sugars burn through you quicker and they cause this insulin resistance, this disruption in your insulin levels, insulin being a hormone that carries energy to the cells of the body, the energy being the glucose you ate. So if we're just plain flat out getting too much sugar, and you guys can look, like, I haven't been doing the best job of reading labels. I just was like, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm not going to worry too much. I'm going to live my life. And then this last weekend, I went shopping, trying to do a better job for my grandson and myself, and I started looking at labels when I was picking up bagged or boxed food. By the way, we've cut back a lot on some of the snacks that we were having, but I was shocked. In a number of the foods that we just get and think are family staples, two things they were very high in, two things that were some of the first ingredients on the list of almost every label I picked up, and that was these seed and vegetable oils that I talk about, and sugar. So those two things are causing insulin resistance in higher and higher rates. I talk about sugar a lot, but we don't talk enough about those seed oils and insulin resistance. They actually have something in them called linoleic acids that causes some inflammation, and that can increase your likelihood of being insulin resistant or having an insulin dysregulation problem in your body. So it's not just about the sugars, it is about those oils that we talk about, those oils that you see on the shelf that they tell you are healthy oils. Most of them are byproducts. Now, when we look at our food too, we've gone from eating something that's clean and organic and natural to having versions of everything. Like, everybody's so afraid of milk, and yeah, we shouldn't be overindulging in milk. So they've gone to almond milk or oat milk or some milk to make up for it. And yet I was listening to a guy who had worked for manufacturing companies and said that, like, almond milk is just like the waste product of the almonds, and they add a whole lot of other ingredients. The almond part of that almond milk is very small. Then you have your other components that are not as healthy for you. And I don't remember right offhand. I was just amazed that this guy was actually talking about it. So he said he would never drink almond milk or oat milk because, yeah, they can be very inflammatory and they can actually cause you to gain more weight. The mechanisms, again, I need to go back and listen to this guy talk to understand all of the mechanisms that he's talking about. But We went from having foods that were whole and nutritious to having everything boxed and everything modified and everything changed because, oh my God, this is bad for you. So let's find an alternative. That alternative happens to be made up of waste product from the food industry that may not be the most healthy for us, but we buy into it because the marketing is so good. And now we have a problem. Now, that's just part of the food problem, right? But then we have the fact that our crops aren't rotated, that we have vast miles and miles of farmland that have vegetation on them, but no animals near them. And the animals are what refeed the soil through the compost that's made from their waste. And that refeeding of the soil is what feeds those plants that we're growing. But our plants, our vegetables and fruits are 40 to 50% less dense in most nutrients than they used to be because of not rotating crops, because of not having animals near, because another thing that's happening is we're modifying our foods to grow quicker because we want to feed more people, right? This is what we've all been told. Have you guys been told that, like, oh my gosh, there's a crisis, we can't feed all the people in the world, and so we have to have more sustainable practices, we have to have more of this, we have to have more of that. Well, in the rush to try and feed more people this imperfect food that's making people more hungry, they started stripping out things like fiber and protein and enzymes to make the foods grow quicker. Fiber, especially, keeps the foods dense and small, but we want something that's big and juicy. And so, fiber was modified out of a lot of our food so that that food could grow quicker to feed more people. But what's happening is that food, because it's been modified, because it's not as dense in nutrients, because it's not as fulfilling, is keeping you hungrier. So now you're needing more food. And it's kind of this negative feedback loop where, like, okay, we're doing our best to feed a world full of people and we're trying to pump out all this food, but the food that we're pumping out is making people more hungry and it's making people more sick. And so, was it really the solution? I don't think so. So, and then when we look at the fact that when fiber is stripped out of food, now we are having that sugar hit our intestinal tract way too quickly. And now we're starting to see a rise in blood sugars and a rise in insulin resistance because sugars are just too readily available. What fiber does for us is it slows down how that sugar hits our system, how we utilize the sugar, and how quickly we utilize sugar. So when I talk about things like GLP-1s, one of my biggest contentions with them is that it slows down your gastric emptying or your stomach and your intestines emptying. It does that by slowing down the motility of the muscles in the system. That's not good. When you start training muscles to not move, then they don't move. And then men end up in the hospital. I've heard more from women with a bolus or a blockage of food in their intestines that is now becoming toxic to them, and they have to go in and surgically have that fixed. And that comes from those medications that are slowing down the gastric emptying. But just like insulin is not a bad thing, this delayed gastric emptying is not bad either. It's just when we've chemically induced it, uh, and basically told our muscles not to move by freezing them, by causing nerves to not function properly. Now, it's not just affecting your stomach and your intestines, it's affecting how your liver can produce bile and contract and use the bile that we need to help digest our food. So it starts affecting everything. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. So fiber, what it does is when we eat fiber, especially the fiber that I use, I don't know if I have a packet here. That's crazy. Here it is. So the fiber that I use, and that you guys, I was not a big fiber advocate before. I am now because it changed my life and it's been changing multiple people's lives. So this fiber is 7 different types of soluble and insoluble fiber. Why? Why does that matter? And why is it better than things like this metformin that I always, or this Metamucil? I was listening to something on metformin this morning, so I'm getting my words mixed up. But Metamucil is generally one type of fiber. This is two. It's psyllium husk and maltodextrin. Maltodextrin, though, in high amounts can also cause more inflammation. I'll talk about that another time. But this is two types of fiber, and it says 4-in-1, but what they've done is they're trying to replicate this as much as they can, but they can't. So this is 7 different soluble and insoluble fibers. The 3 fibers that help reduce blood sugar spikes are found in this. But what's happening is this, when it hits your gut, starts to gel up. And I usually shake one up, and I don't have that ready this morning. But when it starts to gel up in your gut, it starts to encapsulate the food, not by slowing down the strength of your stomach, but by actually adding some bulk to your food. We're slowing down how quickly that food enters your intestinal tract, meaning it can reduce a blood sugar spike. Lots of information, right? But what you just want to know is that this fiber, which is fiber that we used to get in our foods and are not getting today, no matter how clean you think you're eating, is in there and helping slow down how quickly that food is passing through to the intestines, meaning it's slowing down that sugar drip into the system, meaning we have a lower, slower blood sugar spike, scientifically proven to reduce a blood sugar spike by 20% with this particular fiber, not this one, okay? So fiber is key in part of why what we're doing to address insulin resistance. And we need to understand that. Metformin does not fix your insulin resistance from the inside out. It's helping you address some sugar levels and whatnot. I will share, there was a functional nutritionist talking about, or a functional medicine doctor who was talking about metformin. I'm going to try and find her video and get it put up so you guys can understand. But fiber is key. So now what we really came in to talk about was weight loss and weight on the scale, and how all of this links into everything I've been talking about. It seems like Misha's been rambling here and there, and it's all going to tie together here soon, okay? One of the things that happens with insulin resistance is you start to have some muscle loss. Why are you having muscle loss? Because if insulin can't deliver energy to the tissues of the body, those tissues start to fail or not grow or become unhealthy. Now, I said the 3 tissues that become the most insulin resistant the quickest or use up the most energy per volume are your kidneys, your heart, and your brain. Your liver's right in there too. But the thing that uses up the most energy body-wide is your muscles, because there's more muscle. 25 to 30% of your body is muscle. So if that muscle is active, it's helping you stay insulin sensitive. When it starts to not be active, so we're not moving, or it doesn't get the energy it needs, it starts to fail. And now you start to have things like, well, this is extreme, but we're just going to say first, we'll lead in. So you start to see people who seem to have less muscle definition. They just seem to have less muscle on their body. For a long time, I talked about people having what I called flaccid shoulders. There was no definition in their shoulders. It was just seemed flat and there was not much going on there. And I didn't understand that all of the people, or the majority of the people that I was looking at that had this flaccid shoulders, by the way, that's a thing for me. I like strong shoulders, happen to be insulin resistant or likely were insulin resistant. So when your muscles are not getting enough protein and they're not getting enough energy, they're not growing. And so you start to lose muscle mass, which is muscle is helping. It's like a burner in your system. It's helping keeping that fat down. It's helping keep insulin utilized. But when we have less of it and when it's not working, it starts to not utilize insulin properly. It already hasn't been right, and it starts to lose its function. This can happen to bones too, where they're not getting the proper nutrition. We have a number of things going on with the bones where they're constantly tearing themselves down and building themselves back up, so that it's getting rid of the old cells. And as soon as it's getting rid of the old cells, it's recycling and putting new cells on. So our bones are not just like this thing that are just sitting there. They grew and they're stopped. They're constantly decaying and regrowing. Insulin messes with even that. So now you have weaker, thinner, more brittle bones as well. Some of the most dense tissues in your body, your muscle and your bones, are starting to be weakened and lessened because of insulin resistance. But what's not being lessened is your fat cells. So now you're putting on fat. When we look at fat as opposed to bone or muscle, if we took the same weight of tissue, fat would take up a big, you've seen the displays where fat, like 5 pounds of fat is this big, huge chunk of thing. And yet, if you look at muscle or bone, 5 pounds of that is much more dense. And so it's much smaller. So when I talk about the scale lying to you or not giving you the best measure, this is why. Um, when you can put two people on a scale that both weigh 150 pounds, one who's very insulin resistant and one who's not and who's very active. The active person at 150, the one who's more insulin sensitive, is likely to have more muscle mass and a smaller body measurement than the person who weighs 150 and who's insulin resistant, carrying a lot of fat and far less muscle. The interesting thing is, even though insulin resistance can cause you to start losing muscle because it's not getting nourishment to the muscle, or losing bone density because those osteoclasts and osteoblasts is tearing down and building back up function is disrupted. When we start to reverse insulin resistance, the reverse happens. Bone function starts to happen more normally. Your bones are breaking down and building up at a more normal rate. And so your bone strength is much healthier. Your muscles are able to get that energy into them. And so they're able to function quicker. Have you guys ever done a workout? If you're insulin resistant or you have any of the other things, you do a workout and you just feel like you're so drained, like everything in your body just hurts. Well, because you're not able to get energy to the cells that you just worked out, and now they're suffering too. When you start to understand insulin resistance, when you start to reverse it, the opposite happens. Now you're getting energy and nutrients to the muscles. And so you build natural muscle without really doing any exercise. And so I'm not talking about bodybuilder muscle. I'm talking about natural, normal health, healthy levels of muscle, because your body is insulin sensitive, because insulin is allowed to deliver the energy to the cells. Now the cells are getting the fuel they need, your muscle cells, and they're starting to build up again. Now, why does this relate to the scale? You can kind of guess, I think. Most of you can kind of guess. So, as you're starting to become more insulin sensitive and as you're starting to lose fat off your body, and you're stepping on the scale, and you're stepping on the scale, and you're stepping on the scale again, and it doesn't feel like the weight on the scale is changing, especially if you've put in some of the other things that I talk about, getting in some exercise and doing some intermittent fasting. What's happening is your body is now building lean tissue. And it's not just about the skeletal muscle, it's about the other tissues of your body that need protein and energy as well. Heart, liver, kidneys, stomach, all of that is tissue that needs nourishment, that's unable to get it when we're in an insulin resistant state. So step on the scale, fat's coming down, muscle is going up. So fat's coming down much quicker and the muscle cells are rebuilding quicker. And so that scale weight may not change because you dropped fat, you gained a little muscle. Now, eventually at some point, you're going to kind of level out with the muscle and the fat. And so you'll start to see that the fat dropping off relates to weight loss. But in the beginning, your body getting healthier, your body losing the fat does not necessarily translate to a change of scale weight, because your other denser tissues were not getting the nutrients they needed before, and now they are. So now they're thriving while the fat is losing. Does that make sense to everyone? Do you understand why, like in even some fitness influencers will say don't step on the scale every day. I've been around bodybuilders and competitors my most of my life, and most of them will step on the scale every day because they're trying to make sure that they're, on track for where they're supposed to be. But your weight fluctuates, you guys. Your weight can fluctuate 4 to 5 pounds in a day, depending on inflammation and water retention. That 4 to 5 pounds in a day does not mean you put on fat weight. That could be other things going on. So be careful with stepping on the scale all the time. Instead, one of the things I say is get a tape measure out, get your clothes out. Make a mark of where you are when you start, and know that if you take measurements, those measurements should start to come down. If you test how your clothes fit, your clothes should start fitting differently. And that can all happen before the scale weight ever changes. So it actually happened for me, or I might not believe it, but when I started the system, I needed to lose weight for a surgery that I had to have, and I didn't think I could lose the weight. And so I started the system because I wanted to get my diabetes under control and because I needed to lose this weight. Those were the two reasons I started the protocol I talk about. Um, it does make sense. Thank you, Margie. So what happened with me was I started the system. I was having better mental energy. I was having better clarity. I was starting to sleep better. I wasn't having the leg cramps in the morning. I was having swelling starting to go down. A number of things were happening. But at 30 days in, I hadn't lost any weight. So I, like most people, were like, well, this just isn't working because I haven't lost any weight. And I was encouraged to just wait a minute, just wait a little bit longer, give it the 90 days and see what could happen. So at 30 days in, I hadn't really lost any weight, but I was told to go check my measurements, to go check my clothes. I hadn't done my measurements before. Don't know what was going on with me because usually I plan better than that. But I went to try on some shorts I had bought in before I started the system, thinking, yeah, I'm going to wear these shorts. They look really cool. They're, the denim that back then they had the like little rips in them, all of that stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to be the cool kid again. I'm going to wear something that doesn't look like grandma clothes. When I bought them, I couldn't even get them buckled up because they were so tight on my body. 1 month in, they buckled up completely comfortably, if not maybe a little loose, and the legs and butt in them were already starting to get too loose on me. And by 6 weeks, I had noticed that those shorts, I only got to wear them 3 times because they ended up being just too big and too baggy for me to wear. So I bought them, and by the time my 90 days was up, they were actually too big and not just fitting. Um, but that was an indication to me. At 6 weeks, I started to lose the weight. At 6 weeks, the weight started coming off and the fat just kept peeling off, and I started feeling better and better with all my other symptoms. Now, I was smaller at 30 days than I was at day 1, but I didn't recognize it because my scale weight hadn't changed. And had I not thought, "Oh, I have this one pair of shorts that I really wanna check because, everything else I bought was big and baggy or an elastic waisted and all of that." If I hadn't have seen that, I wouldn't have known that this is what happens. Um, so weight loss does not mean fat loss when we're looking at the scale. In fact, when we look at some of the medications that people are using to help with weight loss, like I just heard about Scott Disick. Now, I don't follow the Kardashians, I don't any of that, but those are names that come up and you just can't avoid them, right? So he's asking for help because he was doing Ozempic for a long time, trying to manage his weight, trying to keep his weight at a healthy weight, trying to be thin enough to be on the Kardashian show. And now he has Ozempic face, whereas he's lost all this muscle in his face and he's lost muscle throughout his body. That's one of the side effects with many of those medications, is that you start to have this rapid weight loss. That means you're actually losing muscle as much as you're losing fat, or you're, I'm not going to say as much. So 40 to 50% of the weight loss could be muscle loss and not just fat loss. So I'm hoping that you guys understand that if you want a healthier body, it's not about that scale weight. It's about that ratio of muscle to fat. And the more of that lean tissue you have, the more of the lean fat you have, or the more of the lean muscle you have, the healthier you're going to be. But it doesn't mean that the scale weight's going to go down, and we have to get over that. Also, it's not about calorie restriction. Okay. So I know there's all kinds of people out there who push calorie restriction, calorie restriction, calorie restriction. When we talk about intermittent fasting, which is one of the tools that I use to help with insulin resistance, um, intermittent fasting is just allowing our body to switch metabolically between burning sugar for fuel and burning fat for fuel. And when we allow that metabolic switch to happen, now we're starting to be more sensitive to our food being utilized for energy when we do eat, and us being able to burn fat for fuel and allow our body to do the rest of the work it's supposed to do when we're not eating. Because we are not built to have fuel all the time. So think about if you bought a car, a brand new car, and you put gas in it and you did all the things and you washed your car and you loved your car and how beautiful that car looked and ran. And you kept taking care of it that way, and that car would keep its value much longer. It would keep running much longer at a better rate. But now if you got that car and you just kept putting fuel in, but you didn't change the oil and you never turned the car off, you just kept putting fuel in, that car would break down pretty quickly. And yet we think that continually putting fuel in our body is going to help us be healthier. And it's just not true. We're not built that way. We are not built to ingest calories all day long or every 2 hours. We're not built for that. What we're built for is to get our butts out there and work. And then when we're tired, go have a good meal and then go work some more and then have another good meal and then stop all this. Like, I can't imagine a time, except for maybe the royal courts, where people worked and then came home and just laid on their butts and ate all this delicious food. No, they were worried about getting to bed because they had a big day the next day. They were worried about getting all the stuff prepped for the next day, and they were not overeating like we overeat now. Um, this whole eating every 2 hours and this whole calorie restriction thing, eating every 2 hours, scientific studies have shown that we're not just eating 6 times a day when we do that. Most people are eating up to 16 times a day and then wondering why insulin levels never get under control. So, and for me, you guys, I don't know about you. I would love to take a listen. So I have some ADHD and autism. I'm pretty open about that. For me, it's like if you tell me that I can eat whatever I want throughout the day, I'll start out the day thinking I'm eating fine. And then if you tracked it throughout the day, I will have eaten way more than I thought I did. And if you tell me to eat every 2 hours, and actually, when I started gaining weight and having problems, it was listening to somebody who told me to eat every 2 hours. Yeah, I lost some weight in the beginning, but over time, over years of time, over decades of time, it destroyed my metabolism and caused me to have a weight issue. I wish I would have never listened to that. Now, for me, if I can regulate myself and say, this is the eating window I get, this I want to focus on protein, fats, and fiber during that eating window, and I'm going to maintain my sugar levels lower, and I'm not going to snack. That kind of direction gives me more control over my life than if you were to told me that I need to eat smaller amounts, but I need to eat every 2 hours. I know, because I've done it, that what happens is I end up being hungrier throughout the day and more often, and then more likely to overeat or have those excess calories than if I just have a shorter window and I know that I'm having a couple of big meals in those windows and I'm focusing on nutrition for my body during those windows. I do much better. And I think most of us do, because we are in such a stressful environment where our lives are just crazy busy, and we have kids who have demands, we have family who have demands, we have dogs who have demands, we have bosses who have demands, and at the end of the day we're exhausted. And so one of the most mindless things that gives us dopamine, that helps us start to feel like we have some kind of control, is to eat. Eating actually increases your dopamine. And so if we're under this load of stress and we're just telling ourselves, "Oh, well, I'm allowed to eat every 2 hours. I just have to eat this smaller portion." And then we start out with that smaller portion, and then we're just like, "Just a little bit extra is not gonna hurt." And then we eat a little bit extra, but we're eating all the wrong foods, and now we have a problem. So if you just start to focus on fiber, protein, and fats, and I can go over that on another morning, why those specific nutrients, they help keep you fuller longer. They help give your muscles and your tissues nutrients that you need in order for your body to sustain. By the way, I was wearing this big watch today. Okay, this is not really a watch, it's a red light therapy. But it came with another system that I'm actually starting to use now, and I've talked about it a little bit. Um, What's interesting to me is, because I'm self-aware enough, I already derived the fact that I had become anemic somehow. Why I became anemic, I don't know. But I knew that I was, and I did this system, and it showed that I was anemic. And anemia, when we're not able to uh, absorb iron, we start to get tired, and then you start to get more hungry, and then you start to have more problems with weight loss. But that system has helped me understand. But more so, what it does is, after I do a scan, an energetic scan in the morning, I have my supplements, which these are included in there in my supplement profile, and it will tell me every day exactly what I need in my body, what my body's lacking. Almost everything that comes up every day for me has to do with my gut. And I think that's true for most of us. Our gut has been neglected, and fiber is one of the things that helps feed our gut. So getting that gut microbiome under control really helps. How this helps is, this is actually called a prebiotic, and it actually feeds those probiotics, the good bacteria in your gut, and allows them to start functioning more healthily instead of being beat down by all the negative gut bacteria, like things like yeast in the system that are causing you to have itchy skin and infections and whatnot. Fiber is really important. And the system, why I brought up the system is, it just shows me every morning. This morning, there was a digestive enzyme that I needed to take. There was a prebiotic and a probiotic that I should take. But almost everything in my library that comes up on a regular basis for me has to do with the gut. You guys understand that your gut has a lot to do with your weight loss, your weight gain, and why you're feeling so ill all the time. And metformin doesn't address that, and Ozempic and Mounjaro don't address that. Fiber does. Fiber starts to give you gut health back, and when your gut is healthy and clean, then you're gonna start to lose that fat. Now, also, with fibers like this one, well, all fibers will do it, but this one does a really good job of it. It increases in a fasted state. Now, if I was to drink this fiber right now in a fasted state, internally what would happen is, this would go in and it would have a bulk in my gut, so I would feel a little fuller, and I've used it for that purpose, not just as a pre-meal drink. But it also starts having your body create these things called short chain fatty acids. When short chain fatty acids rise, it's cueing your body to burn fat for fuel. When short chain fatty acids rise, it's helping your body understand that it needs ketones. They're the little messengers that are saying, hey, we're in fat burning mode now. We're no longer burning sugar for fuel. Fiber is key in all of that. Fiber does so much in our bodies than make us poop. It does so much more than any of us realize. Maybe I'll talk about fiber tomorrow. Maybe I'll just talk about fiber in general. But we need to understand that if we're not getting fiber in the foods that we're eating, it's causing us to have this sugar overload that's causing us to be sick. Bottom line. So, what are we going to do for weight loss? First off, stop stepping on the scale every day. Stop it. I mean, and listen to me. Listen to me. I step on the scale every day because that's how I was trained as a teenager at a home ec. I went, oh my God, what was home ec, right? I had a home ec teacher who told us that we didn't care about ourselves if we didn't step on the scale every day. So it got ingrained in me, and it's something like, I try to hide the scale from myself. I try to do all that. But those little fluctuations daily in your weight, don't mean that you gained weight. It could be that you didn't get enough sleep and you have some inflammation in your body. Maybe you had too much seed oils and that caused an increase in inflammation in your body. And so now you're retaining more water, or now you have some inflammation that needs to go away. And just by stopping those foods, you'll lose 5 or so pounds because all that inflammation went away. It wasn't fat loss. If you want fat loss, pay attention to that you're giving your body nutrients. I was nutritionalizing is what I was trying to say, your body. Give your body nutrients so that it can cope with what it's supposed to be doing instead of just running amok like a 3-year-old because we gave it too much sugar. Um, so understand that your weight loss has to come from fat loss if you want to remain healthy. If you don't want to have that Ozempic face, Ozempic butt, where your skin is just hanging off of you and you obviously have no muscle left, get your body moving, do some intermittent fasting, get in fiber, protein, and fats first when you eat, every time you eat, in that order on your plate. That will help you become more insulin sensitive. Now, for me, what I do is I'm having this tea in the morning. Sorry, I have allergies and my nose is kind of clogged. So I'm having this tea this morning, which is just a packet like this. I poured in hot water. I have another, actually I have two here. So I have another tea that's iced that when I go sit down and do my other stuff, I'll be drinking that, sipping that throughout the day. The tea actually helps me speed up my metabolism. It helps me with antioxidants, anti-inflammatory markers. It helps me with vitamins and minerals and just nutritionalizing my body. So the tea gives me energy, helps me through a fasted state, helps me burning fat for fuel, helps me with ketone production, helps me with HGH production, and it's yet at the same time giving awesome nutrition to my body while being in a fasted state. It also shuts down my hunger. Um, this tea can increase that GLP-1, and if you don't understand that, we'll talk about it another morning, glucagon-like peptide action in my body by up to 70%. So I had several conversations with people this week because I just recently started talking about glucagon, and how when we become insulin dysregulated or insulin resistant, we also end up with this glucagon dysregulation. So let's break that down. Insulin helps you burn sugar for fuel. Glucagon helps you burn fat for fuel. But guess what? Okay. Insulin is saving sugar. Glucagon is trying to get rid of sugar, but it's doing it by dumping sugar back into your bloodstream. And one piece that most people are missing with insulin resistance is this glucagon excess in your system as well. So now when people try to fast, their blood sugars actually go up and they actually start to have higher blood sugar spikes because glucagon is dysregulated as well. And glucagon is going out trying to find energy sources and release it back into the bloodstream. And the body does have back doors to get some of this energy into the cells that doesn't require insulin in this state when glucagon is out. But if glucagon is dysregulated because it's been dysregulated by insulin so long, and why does that happen? Yeah, Diane, I do. So let me answer that question in a second. But when we have too much insulin and our bodies is used to kind of having sugar all the time, or we're eating every 2 hours, or we're basically eating all day and snacking all day, what we're telling our body is that the fuel source it needs is sugar or glucose. So when we start to fast and we have this insulin dysregulation, our body's like, wait, where's the sugar? Where's the sugar? And glucagon goes, ooh, I got the sugar for you. I'm going to go find it. I'm going to go scavenge it. I'm going to get it back in the bloodstream so you can have that level of blood sugar that you're used to. Give it time. You may have to start out with a shorter window of intermittent fasting and build up to a longer window of intermittent fasting as your glucagon and your insulin starts to come down and normalize. But understand, if your blood sugars are high, especially if you're doing the system and your blood sugars are staying high in the morning, understand that this has happened to your body over a number of years, and it's not going to reverse overnight. Your body's going to have to kind of undo some of the things that happened so that it can start to perform more naturally, normally, more healthily. And sometimes that looks like things getting maybe marginally worse before they get better. I'm going to address this thing about what I'm measuring with, Diane, and I'll tell you that. But I also want you guys to understand this. I had a conversation with a gentleman this weekend who was like, it's been 30 days and my triglycerides aren't down. And I said, okay, well, I'd love to see your labs before and your labs after the 90 days on the system. And then he admitted he hadn't had labs before he started. It had been almost a year before he started. And now he had them again, and his triglycerides really hadn't changed much. And I'm like, well, we don't know what happened during that year. I know from my own labs that my triglycerides, every 3 months when I went in for a checkup, because we were trying to figure out what was going on, my triglyceride levels would go up and up and up. So, say I had my labs from when I was 56 and I started the system at 57 and I didn't have labs in between there, I wouldn't have known that my triglycerides were steadily rising over the last year because my insulin was out of control, and I wouldn't be able to see that, oh, so it took 9 months for my labs to go up even higher than they showed on the last report. But in 30, not 30 days, 90 days, my triglycerides are actually back to where they were because they had risen and now they're fallen. So we need to see those labs before you start, like just before you start and just after you start, to see what's happening with you. The company has an amazing offer for people who are really conscious about this, and this is their A1C, not their lipids. We have a place where you can order um, an A1C kit to test your A1C when you start the system, and then test your A1C at 90 days to see, was there really a change. And it's only like $45. We don't really make money on that. We're just trying to give an offering of a service to you guys for this A1C, which is the gold standard measure for what's really going on with your blood sugar. So if you're on the system, if you're about to start the system and you want to know how to get that A1C test that you do at your home without having to have all these doctor visits and all that, let me know. Now, so the system, you guys, again, the system now is this. It's a tea in the morning, a tea in the afternoon, and a pre-meal drink before you eat your biggest meal of the day. I will always have two of these. I will always be having a fiber before every meal because I know that my gut needs that. But the system now is two teas a day, one fiber a day. That's that. So again, helping you feel fuller longer, helping your mental clarity and energy. You guys, actually, this scanner that I'm talking about actually will pull these up in my scans. Whether it pulled them up or not, this is a staple for me. I'm doing those. But the scanner, Diane, it's a technology called AO technology or AO systems. It actually uses the energy in your body to tell what's going on in your body at that moment. Like, our bodies are constantly changing, right? But at that moment, so I do the scan 3 times a day. When I wake up in the morning and I've put all of my supplements in, and anybody who's on my team also gets access to I transfer that whole library to you to see if there's things that you might be needing. But it will tell me, like this morning, it came up with those digestive enzymes. It came up with Unimate for energy. Some days it comes up with protein, that I need a couple of scoops of protein. Maybe I'm not getting in enough protein. It will tell me all of that. And it's a simple 10-second scan that I do that then tells me what's going on in my body. It actually can help me see internally what's going on with vascular issues and all of that. And then it also helps me rebalance that. So I'm adding another arsenal, or another gun to my arsenal of taking care of my health, or another fix to my arsenal of taking care of my health. And this scan happens to be it. And I'm kind of obsessed right now because it really actually even shows me insulin resistance markers. It shows me my blood lipid panel. So it gives me a good indication every day of where I'm at. If you're interested in that, let me know. I've been doing a scan for free for my new customers if they so choose. But for me, it's been a great technology to help me start to understand what my body actually needs. So I'm not taking a bunch of supplements that I don't need, and I'm getting in exactly what I do need. That, on top of the Feel Great system, I feel like I have hope again with my health. Now, Zuby, you guys, if you're interested in that, let me just message me and tell me you're interested in the scan, and then we can have that conversation. I'm working on getting that added to my website. Um, it's an amazing tool, and a friend of mine has been telling me about it for quite some time, and I was really resistant because I had so much going on. But once I sat down and actually did it, um, I was shocked. I was just really shocked at how well it could pinpoint. And now, is it healing me? I'm not going to say that it's healing me, but it certainly is giving me the awareness of where I'm out at that moment in time every day, that I can tell, what's going on. Do I need to hydrate more? Do I need to whatever? Do I need CoQ10 today? Do I need omega 3s right now? Do I need actually the scan always comes up with, because remember I said that I self-diagnosed because I'm very self-aware and realized I was anemic, but my iron supplement, it calls for that at max dose most every day right now. That's getting better. But that was interesting to see. So if you're interested in the system then that I'm using that got me better with insulin resistance, just check the link in my profile and message me. And I will get you all that information. If you're interested in the scan, um, let me know that too. And if you're in my client list and I haven't done a scan for you, I will do one for you for sure. And try to explain it. Now, it's going to be work best if you do it consistently and start to understand what your body really needs. But if you're interested in that, let me know that too. Okay. I'm going to head out today and go get some stuff done. You guys, thanks for joining me this morning. Just please, please, when you're looking at weight loss, understand that what you're really looking for is fat loss. So step off the scale and allow yourself some peace. Focus on giving good nutrients to your body and focus on your health first, and the weight will come. Okay. We'll talk to you guys in the morning. I think I am going to talk a little bit about fiber tomorrow and why it's so important, all the amazing things it does in our body. And one of the reasons why I will always be doing more than one fiber a day, because it's made a change in my life that I can't believe. Got sons, got Zuby. If you emailed me, I don't remember seeing it. So I've been going through. Just send me a message here on TikTok or on my. You guys, it's my email inbox is so full. It's always best to just use the link and use the WhatsApp and text me. If I see the text, I'm going to get right back to you. Some of your names come through clearly in my email, and as I scan through my email, if I don't see something that triggers me that, hey, this is somebody who's interested, I don't often catch those. Yeah, I need to change my email inbox because, like most of y'all, it's inundated with stuff. So text is always the easiest way to get a hold of me. Okay. So just shoot me a quick text and I will do that. I will go check and see if I can find an email from you. Um, but Zuby, if I don't know your real name, it might not make sense to me. So just get a hold of me here on TikTok or text me and we'll get that straightened out. Okay. And then everyone else, I'm going to head out. Good morning, Karen. I'm going to head out for the morning and we'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm going to talk about fiber tomorrow and why that's so important. You guys take care of your health today and understand that this is. Oh, the other thing was this person that I talked to this weekend was saying about their lipids, and they're like, well, do I have to do this forever then? And I'm like, well, what statin medication have you been put on that you're told you ever get to go off of? What blood pressure medication are you put on that you've ever been told you get to get off of? And do they tell you that those are actually making your insulin resistance and thereby making your symptoms worse? They're not telling you that. So what I'm offering is a nutritional system that's filling the gaps that, yes, I'm going to do every day for the rest of my life, because our food is imperfect. And until I can make sure that I have food that has the right nutrient density and fibers and stuff in it, I'm going to have to supplement because our food system is imperfect. But yes, I'll be doing it every day for the rest of my life, not just for 90 days. Because if the root cause was there before my 90 days, then the root cause is still there after my 90 days. And if I don't understand that this is just helping fill in those gaps, this may not be the system for me anyway. So you guys need to understand that this is a lifestyle change. And in order to make change, you've got to make change. And so if you don't want to continue down the path of disease and disorder that we've had today, that's lifestyle related, linked to this food that we're eating that's imperfect, then you've got to make a change. so that you can start to be healthy. And not everyone is going to make the change where they're going to stop today and go start eating beef every day for the rest of their life, because that's the big thing right now, right? Carnivore. And I haven't bought into that yet. But any of those things that are making you make big, wild changes, you're less likely to stay consistent with, and then it doesn't work. So it doesn't matter how well it works for someone else. If you can't sustain it, it's not going to work for you. And this just makes everything more sustainable and easy, because we're just plugging the gaps in the nutrition that we have present today so our bodies can do what they're supposed to. Okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Thanks for joining me today, and have a great day. Have a good day.